my name is Megan Coon with Powerhouse Real Estate, and today I want to talk to you about how you can avoid legal disputes during a real estate transaction. When you're purchasing or selling a home, it is a huge transaction. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, and there can be a lot of emotions involved. And so, unfortunately, legal threats come up quite often because you each have your own opinions, your own emotions, and your own objectives that you're trying to meet. And so as we go through the process of buying and selling real estate, there are a lot of things that the association and the real estate industry has done to protect you as a buyer or seller to make sure that your money is protected and that you cannot go into a legal dispute and be sued. One thing to keep in mind as you work with a real estate agent, we have access to legally approved documents. They've been written up by lawyers in our state that know and have experience in the real estate industry. So they understand exactly what needs to be in those contracts to protect both buyers and sellers from any legal disputes that might come up. Another thing to keep in mind as you use these legal documents is if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. A handshake is not a contract. If you are walking through the home and the seller happens to be there and you say, hey, could you leave that freezer? That is not considered a contract unless it is in writing and signed by both parties. So we want to make sure as we go through the contract process that we're using these legal documents and that we're filling them out correctly, and that also anything that you have in mind needs to be in the contract. Anything, even if it's very small. So make sure that you're working with your agent closely to address all of your concerns and any questions that you have, so that if it's something that we need to put in the contract, we can, to make sure that you're protected. Another way to make sure that you're legally protected, specifically for sellers, is to fill out these property disclosures correctly. We're going to give you a document as you list your home called property disclosures, and this will give you the opportunity to note anything you know about the home, the condition of any items, where the utility services come from, all of the things that you would want to disclose to the buyer moving forward. Now, sometimes I have sellers be a little vague on these because they don't want to raise any concerns. Let's say that you have an ice dam on the property and you don't want to disclose that on the property disclosures because you're worried that the buyer will be concerned about that, even though you took care of it completely. Now, that is a concern that you might have, but if you don't disclose it and the buyer finds out about it later, then that could come back on you as the seller. So you want to make sure that you're disclosing everything and anything that you know about the property. That's your opportunity to wash your hands from the legal arguments and to make sure that you have disclosed and done your due diligence as the seller to make sure that the buyer knows what they are buying. The buyer then has the discretion to look at those disclosures, raise any questions, have any inspections done that they prefer. So if they are concerned about the ice dam that you disclosed, they could definitely bring in the right contractors and inspectors to make sure that that's not going to become an issue for them. That is your prerogative as the buyer to make sure that you do a good amount of inspection to make sure that as you purchase the home, there are no surprises or concerns after you've purchased the home. Because once you pass your due diligence period, then you kind of lose your prerogative to leave and get your money back. It then becomes a solid transaction and it's a lot harder for you to get out of your obligation to purchase the home. Now, I know as we go into a real estate transaction, emotions can be really, really high. This is part of the reason why you want to use a great real estate agent, because we become the buffer between you and the seller. Our emotions are removed, and so we can therefore think clearly and make sure that as we make decisions and have conversations with the other side, that we are doing so with no emotions involved. When you're super emotional, it's really hard to think clearly, and it's really hard to consider that on the other side of this transaction is a human being. And so we want to remember that, and we want to think without our emotions. So as the emotions get high, my recommendation would be to take a step back so you can think clearly and you can make the decision with your head and not with the emotions. We want to make sure that we're always giving a positive vibe to the other side and that we're keeping things very professional and not letting our emotions get ahead of us. All right, and the last thing that I want to talk about today as far as keeping yourself out of legal trouble is make sure that you're holding up your end of the deal. In the contract, there will be promises that you're making to the other side, as well as obligations that you have to get through this purchase. So make sure that you're meeting your deadlines, that you're following the guidelines that are written in the contract so that you aren't going against this legal document that you've signed. Another thing to keep in mind as a buyer with this is we want to make sure that you have a great team. Your lender is specifically going to make sure that you're meeting your financial deadline. If the lender is slacking, then that makes it hard for you to hold up your end of the deal. And so as you're selecting your team, it's vitally important that you choose great people to work with as far as your real estate agent, your title company, your lender, your insurance company, your inspector, because all of these people are going to play a role in making sure that your contract goes smoothly and that you're holding up your end of the deal. While it can be really stressful going into a real estate transaction, an agent will be there to help walk you through it. These documents can be really long and they can be really daunting. So make sure that you're reading through them and you're not just blindly signing whatever your agent is sending you, because you may have questions come up as you read these documents that you didn't know you had. And if they come up after the fact, it's really hard to go back. So always work closely with your agent, ask all of the questions. That will help us help you to make sure that you have a smooth transaction and you don't get into legal trouble. My name is Megan Coon with Powerhouse Real Estate.